All right, I'm very happy to have this interview call. As many of you know, I do a number of interviews with coaches that I admire and respect, and they get great feedback as we learn from other coaches what their lives are about and what they have going on in the world. And today, I'm happy to have two coaches as my special guests, Rhonda Williams. Rhonda, thank you for coming. And Carla Rotering. And it's a great pleasure of mine to have these two wonderful coaches on the call. Carla, I've known forever. And Rhonda, I only know by reputation. I've followed her on LinkedIn and heard so much about her that I'm really happy to have this call. And the thing I'd like to ask the two of you about to begin with is an event you're doing in Anguilla. And tell me first, where is Anguilla?
So Anguilla is actually in the Eastern Caribbean. It is just north of St. Martin, so it's about a 20-minute boat ride from St. Martin. It's little, it's a small, fairly exclusive island, or at least historically it has been. About 15,000 people on this island, about 3.5 miles wide, about 15.5 miles long, and has really been designated as one of the top islands in the Caribbean year after year by Travel and Leisure and places like that. So it's a great foodie destination. It's a great Caribbean destination. And it's unique in that it doesn't have cruise ships or casinos or jewelry stores. It's really a place to go and just be in that Caribbean space.
It sounds great. And you are putting on a retreat seminar called Women Who Do Too Much. It's for women who do too much. And I was really intrigued by that. I've read information about your retreat. And the first question I had is, do the two of you as coaches, when you coach people, men and women, do you see a difference in maybe culturally or socially our society on what women are up against and face and how they experience their world today versus how men do, without stereotyping or anything? But is there a unique element to how women have been conditioned that would have them run into this situation of feeling like they're just doing too much? Because I know a lot of women who are my clients who have that situation where they feel, I'm just doing too much and I don't know what to do about it. Is that something that women face in a different way than men do? I'll ask you first, Rhonda. What do you see when you coach people?
Yeah, so I definitely do. A really great question. I really do see that there is a difference. And a part of it is just the way that we've evolved through our societal times. Women for many years ago did not do a lot of work in the workspace, right? Much of their work was at home. But as that started to shift, women began to take on more and more in the workplace. We began to run businesses and run corporations and do all of these things without giving up a lot of our other responsibilities, things that we do as women, that we feel called to do, that we enjoy doing. We're nurturers, we're caregivers. And so it's sort of like going through the buffet line and you keep adding on to your plate, but you don't ever really take anything off. And so until we learn to rebalance and reshift, we can get to that space where we really do begin to feel like, oh my goodness, there's just no room in my life for me anymore. And so that's what I see.
Yeah. Carla, I know as a medical doctor that you were in a man's world for much of your career in medicine. And so you've really experienced what it's like to be a woman in a man's world. Is that going to be something that you help people with in this retreat? And is that something you work with other women about?
Yeah. I mean, when I entered medicine, it really was male dominated, and that isn't quite the same anymore. But for me, it was a real frontier. And so there was a certain way of being that was sort of an unspoken, invisible expectation for women, and some of that prevails now. I agree with what Rhonda says, that we not only continue to have responsibility for the things that were felt to be women's responsibilities prior to our emergence into the workspace, but beyond that, there were some invisible beliefs that we all shared about what women needed to do to sort of claim their place in line. And in the folks that I work with, and a lot of the women that I work with are physicians, those beliefs remain entrenched. So there's a certain belief that we need to do more to demonstrate our right to be there. We may need to offer more, we need to barter for the positions that we receive, or the leadership positions, for instance, that we receive. And they aren't really visible to us all the time. So really having the space to take a look at what's driving that busyness. Is it just that we have too much to do? Or is there something else that compels us to maintain that busy status as a way of demonstrating we have a right to be wherever we are?
So what's the solution to this? I have a daughter who is a CFO, and she does way too much by her own admission. And I know part of your coaching that's going to go on in Anguilla is going to be to address this very thing. So, Rhonda, what do you say is the solution for a woman who feels she's doing way too much but doesn't know what to do about it?
So I think about this in terms of awareness and intention. So Carla mentioned something really important, and that is becoming aware of the beliefs that's driving this busyness in this work. I first want to say that there is nothing wrong. We are not making judgments around this. So I want to be really clear about that, because many times in our lives, we choose to do too much because we have projects and we have things happening, right? I'm in the middle of a launch right now, so I'm definitely doing too much myself. It's the awareness of what's driving that, and it's the intention behind it. When the intention is being driven from something externally, those are invitations for us to really take a look at that and what's happening and why we feel the need to meet these external standards or expectations. When they are internal driven, then the question becomes, is this where you want to be? Is this something that you feel good about? Is this something that's contributing to your life in a positive way? Or is this something that you say, you know what, I am not where I want to be. This is not feeling good to me, and I want to do something different. So I think we always begin in that space of awareness, unpacking, beginning to understand, and then deciding, is this where I want to be, and is this good for me? And if not, then we can begin the journey of, and I think it's an exciting one, deciding where we want to be and how we want to be and show up in the world. And that is a very, very cool place to be.
Carla, what about you? How do you help people who are clients of yours, who are women who feel they're just doing too much and want help with that?
Yeah. So I think Rhonda has pointed to something that I really value also, but I also would say this. We don't really have safe spaces to share these conversations, and we don't have a lot of mentors and peers who are willing to enter into those conversations. So part of it is really being in a place where there isn't any judgments about this, but there's a curiosity about, is life living me, or am I living the life that I'd like to be living? And then to really create those safe, trustworthy, caring relationships that support that exploration with one another. You know, that's not part of the workspace very often. It's not offered very generously many times in our family units. So we end up kind of struggling with this on our own. And part of our intention is not just to have this few days in Anguilla, but to really begin to build relationships that are sustained over time, both with women in Anguilla who will also be present, but among those folks who are attending, so that we can have buddies and we can have mentors and we can have places where our words can be spoken out loud in the clear air without fear. And I think that's a really important part of how we lift each other up and move forward out of this sort of muddy little space in which we do a lot and never halt and relax into a safe space to inquire.
You know, I listened to some of your recordings, and Rhonda, I heard you mention on one of the recordings not attaching my worth to my doing. And boy, that really hit me. That was really insight, because I know a lot of men and women do that. They attach their only sense of worth and value to how much they're doing for other people. Can you talk about that, and what had you mentioned that?
Absolutely. I think that for me personally, there was this moment of reckoning, this moment of awakening, where I began to realize that I was doing so much and I thought that that was me. All of me was wrapped up in all I was doing. And it wasn't until it all came crashing down, because if everything you are is attached in all of this that you do, if you ever stop doing, then you have this sense of, who am I? Where do I belong? And so for me, when I had this major shift in my life, I really began to understand, wait a minute, that's not me at all. There is so much more to me than just the title that I had achieved and the work that I was doing and all of this stuff that I had associated with it. I had to go on a whole journey to figure that out and who I was. And I sometimes tell this story that in all of this, I had to shed a lot of what was me and emerged as someone completely new, to the point where this is something that's really important for me right now as to what's happening in my life. But after I divorced, I was married for 25 years and I did this whole life transformation. I mean, I changed my hair, I got rid of how I was dressing and changed all of that. I lost 50 pounds, I sold everything in my home, I moved, I did all of this. And my ex-husband said to me, who are you? Who are you? I'm not sure that I know who you are. And oh, by the way, was I holding you back? Right, is what he said to me. And I'll never forget those words, because I was trying to figure out who I was. But I emerged as something that I began to realize that the me that was inside trying to get out wasn't really attached to all the stuff that I was doing. So that was sort of my journey and evolution and understanding that all of the doing does not create my being.
Oh, that's beautiful. Carla, I know that because you and I have known each other for a long time, that you were super achieving full-time in the medical world, in leadership positions, and then you went to the University of Santa Monica, and things changed for you. And I run into so many people, women and men, who don't believe change is possible. They think I am who I am, and I couldn't even identify with a kind of radical change that Rhonda spoke about, but you went through a similar change and emerged as someone who was able to coach and consult and help other people. What do you do with people who think, well, I'd like to go to Anguilla or I'd like to get coaching, but I don't really believe in change? How possible is change for people who are grown-ups and feel like they're just pretty much stuck with who they are?
So I'll continue to use myself as an example of that, because I was very fixed on my identity. And interestingly, I sort of came into medicine a little later in life, but really as a result of my desire to be a certain way, but bought into the belief that there were things that I had to do, and of course there are things that you have to do to graduate from medical school and do those things, but somewhere along the way, I lost track of that way of being that brought me to the doorstep of medicine in the first place, and really got attached to my doing. And I was very fixed to that. And I'll reference actually an encounter with you when you said to me, you need to halt. And I remember having this feeling that if I halt what I do, I don't know if there's anything underneath this. I don't know if there's anything left of me, because I had really made this decision that what I did was the whole of me, much in the way that Rhonda's talking about now. So it was a fierce reckoning for me that brought me to USM. And I'll tell you the truth, I showed up there because there was something inside of me that said, go, do this. But my first several months, I sat in the back of the room with my arms folded, sort of daring anybody to nudge me out of my rigid space. And what I know is this: if I was willing to just lay down those ideas for even a few minutes and entertain the possibility that I wasn't fixed in place, that was just a manifestation of everything that I had thought up until that time that would anchor my life in the way that I thought it was supposed to look, regardless of what I needed to leave behind me. I really dared them to do that. But as I showed up and as I just sat and was just willing to not say, oh, this is who I am, but is there something inside of me, right, that is more me than this? And is that field of possibility actually available? So baby steps, really slow progress. I saw people who had sudden epiphanies and things shifted for them. For me, it was really slowly. And then I began to just notice that the more I opened, the more I shifted, the less tethered I got to this fixed notion of who I was. And I really got to the point where I thought, I can create, I can shift, I can move into spaces that I thought were not available to me. And then I remembered, I had done that all along. I have always done that. We have always done that. We might lead ourselves into more fixed spaces, but we are always creating our lives, and we are always moving into different spaces, and none of us are the people we were when we were 15 or 22. So we always are changing, and our intention is to create a transformational experience that allows people to move from that fixed space into something that is more creative and more possible.
Yeah, that's great. It's a miracle. It feels and looks like a miracle when people change so deeply and thoroughly, and how possible that is for everyone. Rhonda, I'll ask you this. I've done workshops with other speakers, presenters, coaches, and a lot of times that's been more difficult than I thought it would be. We're not always on the same page. And how did the two of you get together and choose to work with women this way together? How did that occur?
Yeah, so it's really, really something. So Carla is a really special part of my life. And I met Carla when I was in that space still of doing and working really hard. And I was the interim CEO at a hospital in the Phoenix area. And Carla was our medical director and on our medical staff. And so I met Carla in that role. We were both in that different space. And I just remember always thinking about the incredible physician that she was and telling my team, listen, you really don't want to mess with Carla's patients. Because she was just an advocate, right? Very high quality. And that's the journey that we were on. It was a transformational type of thing. And so we met then and just immediately connected with each other. We had this wonderful relationship. We could talk to each other. When I left that organization a year later, Carla and I lost contact. And then we reconnected some years later through an organization called The Language of Caring, and through another friend of ours, and just picked back up where we left off. All of a sudden, we were both in that work again, in that space, doing wonderful work of transforming organizations. And so we have been partnered ever since. So Carla and I would talk every now and again and talk about this work. And at some point, we started to talk about doing the work of helping women to transform. Not quite sure what that looked like. And then Carla introduced me to Anguilla. And I am now completely in love with this island, and Carla is in love with it. And so she said, wouldn't it be amazing if we could do our retreat here? And I was like, listen, you don't have to ask me twice. I'm in. This is the perfect place. But it really comes from that space of having this common story, of recognizing where we were at different points in our lives, what it took for us to begin to move through some of that. And we are still working on the journey. Trust me, neither of us have arrived yet. She and I talk about this all the time. But it just became this common bond that we want to serve women in a way that is not always available to us. And that is really important to us, because we want for women to have available to them what they want and what they need, what they desire and what they deserve. And that's really what this retreat is about.
Oh, that's great. Carla, I remember when I used to go to retreats or seminars, and for some strange reason, I would get more out of them when they were further away from where I was. There was a sense of possibility and a clean slate and a turning point in my life that wouldn't have occurred if it was in my backyard. So there may be women who are wondering about retreats like this one and who say, hey, why Anguilla? Why not Chicago or someplace I can get to overnight? What do you see the value of a Caribbean island as a location for work like this?
Yeah. So first of all, I agree with you. When we, my experience, and really, we kind of know this, when we do retreat work, right in our own backyards, we don't have the reflection of the environment as something different and possible. And what's interesting is people get very distracted by their ordinary life when they're in their ordinary space. And that includes Chicago, right? So there's something really good about being dropped into an environment that is utterly unfamiliar. So you could also do that in, northern Canada. But there's also something really unique about the Caribbean vibe, if you will. So our intention here is, yes, there are sessions, yes, there are back pocket tools, yes, there's stuff to learn, but we come from this place where experience can inform us in very powerful ways, and that this doesn't have to be hard work. It can be in a place of beauty. It can be in a place where people celebrate day-to-day life in an utterly different way. It can be in a place of uniqueness, and things might emerge for us that we never considered before, simply because that location serves as a metaphor for liberating us from the routine of our ordinary lives. So it's really intentional that we're doing it there.
Yeah, that's beautiful. It's not just where you like to hang out.
Yeah.
I love that. Well, I'll give you each the last word. Rhonda first. If you were talking to a woman watching this interview and felt like she was trapped in doing too much, what would be a message? What would you say to her that might give her a little hope?
Yeah, it's a really great question, Steve. And I think what I would say is, first, I would send a very heartfelt, we're with you. We are with you. We understand. We get it. Again, there is no judgment. And if you are looking for possibilities, if you are open to exploring what could be in a space that has support and comfort and beauty, then we invite you to join us. And know that there is nothing, Carla said this beautifully before, there is nothing for you to do but to show up and be. And I think that is a really powerful message that I'd like to share.
Yes, knowing the two of you, you will do the rest. You'll do the work, and they will be impacted. Carla, what about you? What would you say to a woman watching or listening to this interview?
I would say this, that if there's anything inside of you that is touched by even the notion of entering into that kind of space, say yes. And I used this metaphor before, but be willing to just lay things down for a moment. Walk into the unknown with no expectations, but an invitation to have something different occur that could change things for you from now on. And we don't make promises, we don't want to overpromise, and we believe that the way that this is designed, the way that we really hope to interface with the island and the music and the women there and the opportunities to really explore together, those things could make a difference that you might not have imagined. And at the very least, you would have 6 days on a Caribbean island with just joy. So my invitation is to just say yes. If there's a spark, just say yes, take the leap, stop going and just come.
Beautiful. Well, I'd like to thank both of you very much. I've learned a lot. I always, actually, when you talk about change, I'm not the same person as I was before this call. And I'm going to be sharing it with women I know. And I want to thank you both very much.
Well, thank you, Steve.
Thank you so much, Steve.